Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make over some birdhouses, and we're going to start with this one. And I get some of my birdhouses wholesale, and this is one that I've sold in the past, but it's slowed way down, and I think because the galvanized look is just not popular anymore. So I'm going to give this a paint job and actually even do some decoupage on it. So I just decided to go over the entire thing except for the roof with the color Buttercream. And so this needs 2 coats of this color, and then I'll let that dry well. And then once I get 2 coats on this and let it dry well, then I'm going to start to trim out around the windows. I wanted to keep, and the door actually, I wanted to keep that look, the barn look with the boards around the windows and doors. So because they're raised, then I'm going to be able to paint over the top of it without getting it on the rest and without having to tape off or anything. So now I'm taking the color Caviar and going over both the roof and that trim. And I use a makeup sponge on the trim work so that I can just kind of drag it across without touching the base of the birdhouse. And I make sure to not put a whole lot of paint on my sponge either, so that it doesn't drip onto the birdhouse. And I know that it's not covering completely, but I don't mind that, because when it dries, I'll just put another coat on it and do it the same way. And then I just took a damp cloth and rubbed some of that paint in the high spots off to do my distressing. And then I decided to paint the little bird on the top in the color Sea Glass. And I was careful not to do full coverage on that, and then I wouldn't have to distress it, because I would just let some of that show through. And I did that just by kind of blotting that on there versus giving it a good smooth coat. And then I took some napkins and just tore out some bird images on it, and I will link these napkins in the description. I ordered these from Amazon, but I just tear the birds out and place them where I feel like they'll fit. That's a little bit hard with this, but it worked out. So when you're decoupaging with napkins, only use that printed layer. Generally there are 3 layers. So I usually remove the back 2. This one, I think, only had 1 extra layer, so I only had to remove 1. And be very careful when you're removing those layers that you get all the layers off, because if not, that paper will try to separate when you decoupage it on, and it doesn't do well at all if you don't remove all the layers. I used a piece of tape to separate mine. I just put a piece of tape on the back of it, and it will pull 1 layer at a time off. Just be careful when you're not sure there's an extra layer to put your tape somewhere where you don't mind messing up the napkin, because if that's the only layer and you're trying to pull off another layer, you'll mess up your image. And as you can see here, I'm just using regular clear Elmer's glue to decoupage this on, and I'm just squirting that glue directly onto my piece and smoothing it with a brush, and then putting it on that way, because I'm going to be doing some extra clear coats over this so that it's ready for outside. So a lot of times I just use Elmer's glue, and I use the white Elmer's glue, water it down slightly, and I use that for decoupage instead of the Mod Podge. So maybe half the time I use Mod Podge, and half the time I use regular school glue. Then obviously this one will get sealed. so that it's usable for outside. I thought that this would be a good time actually to replenish my stock of birdhouses because this is a really good time for them to sell. And now for my next one. This was one that was given to me by a friend, and it, as you can see, is very dirty and has some rust, and not the kind of rust that I like. So I'm going to give this a good cleaning and then give this 2 coats of the color Buttercream. I love the look of this, and I almost repainted it this white with the black trim, but I decided I wanted to do some decoupaging on it, so I just decided to just do this a solid color. So I'm going to use a Tim Holtz decoupage paper on this, and it comes in little rolls, and I'll include that in the description also. But I'm just going to tear out some floral images because I don't want this to be decoupage solid. So I'm just going to tear out those images and randomly place it on this birdhouse. And then once I get finished with that, then I use my script stamp from the set I See Paris. That's a redesigned stamp set, and there's one of those stamps that is script, and I just like to use that when I like the size of the script, and I'll stamp that on randomly on this also. Now, I like just decoupaging with just parts of decoupage paper when it comes to items that are shaped like this. Anything that is irregular, especially irregularly round, it will kind of bunch up when you try to wrap it in decoupage paper. And I just like the look of having a lot of this buttercream showing because it just makes this show up even better. So I just like the look of it. Plus, definitely is easier and you get a prettier finish. And I don't usually cut these out. I usually just like to tear them just because you get more of an organic look and the edges kind of fade in better. Some of you might like it to be more precise and cut them out more precisely. But this particular paper has a little bit of script writing behind it anyway, and that just kind of adds to the layering look that I like. So there's more than one reason, I guess, that I'm just tearing these out and leaving some of that white behind it. Now I'm using regular school glue here to decoupage this on with because just like with the first birdhouse, I'm going to be sealing it really well afterwards anyway. So the main thing is just to get it to stick on there good, and then as far as sealing it, then I'll use a spray for that. So once I get enough of these on here and I'm happy with that look and I'll let that dry, then I'm going to put that stamp, and again I will be adding this one in the description. So this is just called I See Paris, and there's a set of about, I want to say 8 or 10 of them, and this one is the script one that comes in that. And then I decided to paint the lid and some of the trim in this moss color, or rather sage color that I mixed up. And so I paint the lid, and then I lay my brush down and just paint over the raised spot of the trim, kind of like the black was on the original piece. So I'm just kind of deciding as I go where I need to add this color. And then obviously this will need to be sealed very well to be outside. I still think this one is more of a decorative piece because it doesn't have a clean out area. That is all one piece. It's not an actual teapot. So that lid is all one piece with the birdhouse. So, and I'm not even sure if how practical for the birds metal birdhouses are anyway, but I do like the look that I got from that one. Now this is one that we had an elderly man that brought a bunch of birdhouses into the shop to sell to us, and I like this design. It's very cute, but it needs some work, and I think this is a real cute little cottage look. But I'm just I start out by giving this one coat of the color Buttercream all over this. Now this little piece on the front, it's one of those little door stoppers, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to leave it or not. I ended up taking that off eventually. But as you can see here, there's that crack between the roof and the wood, and I want to cover that up, so I'm going to be adding some clay molds to that. And although I'm going to be painting over this roof, I went over the whole thing with the same color. That way I would have a good even color to paint over. And I'm using that same sage green that I mixed to paint the roof of this. And I'm using some napkins that I got at Hobby Lobby just recently. So I know they have these. But I kind of like that plank look. As it turns out, it didn't show up as planks that much because they're wider planks for this little birdhouse, but I still like the look that I got. So I just cover the whole body of the birdhouse in this. And instead of measuring and cutting, because this is such an unusual shape, I just kind of go with it and just glue it on and then trim it off. And if it's not perfect, it's not a big deal. For one thing, I'm going to be adding all the trim to it that will hide any imperfections, but this is kind of a cottage look, so I don't mind if it's not perfect. And then once I get this covered completely on all sides, then I'll start making my clay molds. And I use the DAS clay. Any clay will work for this, just whatever you like to use. And I'm just going to make plenty of these. Now this is one of those molds that I've looked for and haven't been able to find on Amazon. It was given to me by my sister. So I'm pretty sure she got it on Amazon, but we just haven't been able to find it. But I make enough of these to go all around the underneath of the roof where there's that little gap there that I need to hide. And I'll glue these on with some Tite Bond, quick and thick. You can use any glue that you want, but that's what I like to use. You could use Gorilla Glue or just regular Tite Bond could be used, but I like the thick and quick because it holds quicker. And if you haven't used these, if you haven't done the molds yet, then they can be glued on while they're still wet, which is great for projects like this when I need them to, put them on wet so that they'll mold to the item that I'm putting it on. So once I get that whole area there at the top filled in with these molds, then I'm going to make a little mold for the top there, the top front, just to dress it up. And I'm using this lock and key set from IOD on this one. And I'll try to find this one and put this in the description as well. But I'm kind of just doing this just because it's something that will fit in that little area and add some interest. So it doesn't have to be this little key lock thing or keyhole thing. So once I get all my molds on, then I'm just going to take that same sage green that I mixed and just carefully go over all the trim because it's already on there, and I really didn't have the option of letting it dry first and then painting it. I don't have any choice but to to just paint this while it's on, and I'm just careful in using a small brush so that I don't get it on my decoupage. And then I had decided to take off that little doorstop thing in the front and use a spoon. And what I did is I just bent the spoon part completely back to where when the spoon is sitting like this, then the handle of the spoon will be straight up and down, and that will allow me to use that as the bird perch. I'm painting this in the same color, and then I'll do a little distress on this. And then I just let that dry and just glue that on. Instead of trying to put a screw in that, I don't have a whole lot of area to work with there. So I just glue that on with some E6000. And now that everything is dry, then I'm going over everything with some white wax. And I even decide to go over my decoupage area with it, just to kind of lighten the whole thing up. So I went over all the green, including the roof, and all the decoupage. So the whole thing gets the white wax, and then I just kind of rub it off good from everything. So then it not only lightens all this up, but it will bring out all the detail in those molds and also in the spoon. So I got an idea for this next one the other night when I was trying to sleep, unfortunately. And these, we would order these from a wholesale company, and I guess it's some sort of a cloche. I think that's what they called it, or lantern. But it had that little board in the center, which I don't consider that to be a bottom, so I really don't know what the purpose for it was. I think that maybe they called it a cloche. But I took that out because what I decided on is, since I'm working on birdhouses today, that this, I just haven't been able to use it because I wasn't happy with the quality of it. We order them and then they come on a big load, and I just wasn't happy with it at all. But now I have decided that I can see this as a bird feeder. It will just actually need an actual bottom in it. So that's what I did. I cut a piece of board to fit in the bottom, and I glued and screwed that on the bottom. And now it is more like a bird feeder, which makes a lot more sense. But because it's rather plain, I'm going to dress it up. And I'm going to do that by, I painted the whole thing in the Buttercream just to kind of give it a good neutral base, and that will work well for what decoupage that I'm going to be adding to it, but then I'm going to trim it out in this color Tea Rose, which is a Dixie Belle color. So I end up painting all of the bottom and even the inside, and the inside of all that roof looking area, and then the inside of the corner post, I guess you would call them. So the entire inside, the only thing that I left in the color Buttercream was the outside of those posts and that bottom piece. I just didn't really see the point in painting that. And I did paint around the edges because those you may see those from the side. But as far as the top of it, I didn't. I may go back and paint the inside of that just because when it's empty, so it'll all look cohesive. And I may just paint the bottom of it as well. I probably should have done that while I was doing this. And at first here, I decided to leave the inside of the post the color white, and that's why they're white here. But I do go back and even paint those. But now I'm just decoupaging this tissue wrap that I got from Hobby Lobby just recently, so they most likely still have it. And I'm just going to decoupage just the outside of these 4 posts. Now, it probably would have been simple to wrap them completely, but I didn't do that. I just painted the inside in that tea rose color, and I was just as happy with it. I don't think it really needed to be completely wrapped. Now, obviously, when I get this one completely finished, it's going to need to be sealed really well also, because I'm decoupaging here with just regular school glue. And even if I were using Mod Podge, it would still need some extra clear coat on it for outside use. So once I get this all touched up with the tea rose and let that dry well, then I use a trim stencil just to stencil all the way around the top and all the way around the bottom. And I'm gonna see if I can find this stencil. I've had it a while, but I'll see if I can find that and link it if I can. Otherwise, just any trim stencil will work. This one didn't even fit it. I could have used that thinner one there, but I wanted more of this on it. So this one kind of goes off the sides, which was fine. I still like the look that, so you don't have to use a just the perfect stencil for this. I just wanted some kind of a vine looking thing to go around the top and the bottom. And I just did that in the color Buttercream because I wanted to bring that Buttercream to the other area. And as I'm looking at this, I'm seeing that I do think I want to paint the inside of that in that tea rose. And then this little bird's nest on a bed spring I made, and I put it in this vignette. I had intended to add that to this video, but I just didn't have time to edit that, so I'm just going to include that in my next video. So I'll just add that to the end of my next video. And again, if you're missing Lori's music, I will include that link in my description. And if you go over and check her channel out and subscribe to it, then you can listen to that whenever you want. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.